Mr. Westgate, would you state for our records your name?
Myron, Westgate,
Your address?
12815 School Creek Road, St. George, Kansas.
The branch of service you served in?
First one I served in was Navy, and the second one was the Army.
The highest rank you received in both the Navy and Army?
Private. It was in the Army and Seaman second in the Navy. And if there's anything lower than that, they didn't tell me about it.
Dates of military service?
Pardon me? What'd you say?
Dates of military service?
Dates.
Oh, I don't know. When was it? What did I write down there, Joe?
The Navy was 1944 to 1946, and the Army 1950 to 1951.
And that's not real accurate, Sam. It could be. That's been,
Right.
the Navy's been about 55 years ago. And I can't remember what I had for breakfast.
Where did you serve?
In the Navy, I went to San Diego to Camp Decatur's, where I took my boot camp training, and I went from there to Camp Elliott, which was an old Marine base where it was a ship out station. And then I left there, and I can't remember the times, guys, but I went from there to North Island Air Base and cooked most of the rest of the time right there.
My name is Joseph Michael Wilson. And my name is Samuel Wilson. We will be the interviewers today. Mr. Westgate, what were you doing before you entered the Navy?
I drove truck for Polar Mercantile in Lawrence, Kansas. I'm pretty sure that's what I was doing. More than one, just before I went in.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted.
Where did you do your training?
San Diego, where I said a while ago.
What did you do in the war and where did you serve?
Same place I said a while ago.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit, Mr. Westgate?
No, not really. They, the one thing the kids might get a little bit of a kick out of when we had to take a little bit of a landing exercise, we'll call it, from what they called Higgins boats. They're what the ships carry on for when they get as far into an island they can get, and then you all load up in Higgins boats and go the rest of the way. And we got on this little island, and I can't tell you what we called it because it wasn't a very nice name, but this island we was practicing on, they had a wall there that made out of old sandbags and bunkers and things like that. And they gave us these hand grenades we were supposed to take up and toss over that log from the distance they'd taught you to do that. Well, this one fella, he wanted to show us how it was really supposed to be done, so he took his and he went up there and he says, fellas, he says, this is, and he dropped it over the side, you know, just standing there, and they had that loaded with sulfur powder that went off. It was just, and that got pretty funny because he was long gone from that position. and just some things like that.
Well, tell them about when you took that, you came back for that guy that was AWOL.
Oh, yeah, in between the time I left Camp Elliott and while I was there, I got some free rides from San Diego on the train all the way back to Chicago twice because I went to escort kids back that had went AWOL. And it was kind of a sad deal. They went home because they were homesick. They weren't bad people, you know. They were just homesick, and you can't do that. So they sent me after them, and just as an escort, and they had to be handcuffed to the arm of the chair in the train. You rode in, the chairs weren't like they are now in the trains. It was considerably different. And so they had to be handcuffed there, and all I was just riding along to make sure that they didn't get away.
So what did they do when they had to go to the bathroom?
I went with them. Handcuffed. And then people didn't know who was who.
They didn't know which one of you was able.
No, they didn't know who the bad guy was. But just, that it was something that somebody had to do. And I didn't volunteer for that. They just said I was going to do it.
Did that have anything to do with your cooking? Was that?
No. I hadn't started that yet.
Oh, I thought maybe they were just trying to get you on the other side of the country because they didn't like your cooking. Or something.
Well, they did that several times, but I came back.
So you said something about being an officer's cook.
Yeah. Yeah, I made that mistake. If I'd have known how that, was, why, not really. But then when I got into the Army, why, that was one of the reasons I got back in the Army. It was because I was a special cooker for the cadre. And they thought they needed me.
And you didn't have any choice.
No, there was no choice. But they was a good bunch of guys out there to cook for, but I didn't get to cook for them very long because during that I didn't have to. Now this is in the Army, Sam. I didn't have to, do all the basic training and the boot camp training and that sort of thing. But I had to take 2-week refresher course. And I don't even think it lasted that long, but it didn't for me. The first day I went out there, I came down off the high wall that you go over, and I thought I ought to be first, and I was coming pretty close. I was second. But when I came down off the thing, my knee went all to pieces, and that was the end of it right there. I spent the rest of the time there in the hospital.
So you didn't do much cooking in the Army?
No, I only cooked for 3 weeks.
Oh.
Didn't cook much longer than that, did I?
Just about that.
About 3 weeks. Nancy got a picture of me and the guys cooking with in the kitchen, and he was regular Army, and he was just about to make 2 of me. Big guy. But he was a good guy to work with.
You got anything else? Any other memories you want to? Any stories you remember? Any buddies you remember? Or?
I didn't have any buddies.
I can believe
I think
that.
you ought to talk about when you was in the ward and what went on there. Tell them about the time when that.
Oh, well, when I was in the hospital?
Yes.
I didn't know if that was exciting. We, everybody in our ward, in Ward 5, was confined to their bed. For the most part. It was and anyway, if you got out of it, why, you was immediately transferred up to Ward 7 there. But anyhow, the way we'd get together once in a while is we had a tennis ball that we were wrapped with a light lanyard, and we'd throw it from one bed to the other, and everybody'd kind of get tied up and anchored and the whole of it. And everybody started pulling, you all come together somewhere. That's why, and when we play cards, that always caused quite an uproar when the ward people came in to straighten things
They had
out.
to move you back.
Yeah. When we didn't figure out how to get back, so they had to put us back. Because everybody was in traction.
Yeah. But the beds were all on wheels. So
Yeah,
you just-
yeah, they'd coast around pretty easy. Nancy used to come out there for every day. And she was,
Now this was at Fort Riley?
yeah, right there at Fort Riley. I never got past that gate. We would have, I don't know how soon we'd have been gone, where we were in line or anything like that. But we would have been up front pretty much, because most of the people there had already been in. They weren't going to take long to get them ready.
Well, in fact, your outfit went across these before you got out.
Yeah. Well, 2 of them got killed right there.
Tell them about
Training?
Sergeant Sardini. I think that should be told.
Yeah, Sergeant Sardini's story's probably already been told. by
Well, tell
somebody.
it anyway.
No, I'm not going to. But bazookas, you know what a bazooka is?
Yeah.
Okay. Take bazooka training in a semicircle, half circle, horseshoe circle. You get a little opening out there, and they was demonstrating how to use that thing, you know, and I was already in the hospital. And it went off. It is a dud, you know, this one time, and it just came out and lit right out there, and before anybody could do a damn thing about it, why, the thing blew itself up, and boy from Clay Center got a big enough piece in the groin that cut enough vertebrae, and he bled to death before they could get it stopped, you know, and things like that. And the same thing happened again. Well, after that thing happened, then the fort, of course, it's always like the team of horses is already gone, so we shut the gate now. But anyhow, they've got to be enough brass there that didn't happen again. I don't know what they found out or what they did do or anything like that, but we didn't have any more accidents like that one, except one other time. There was a kid from our outfit before I went into the hospital that was going down to PX one night and lost his hand.
How do you do that?
Oh, that's a good question.
Nobody knows.
No, they found it in his glove. It was did I ever tell you what his name was? I'm not sure I knew.
No, I don't think so.
Anyway, you know the guy that I wrote back and forth with?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, it was his friend, really.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they found his hand. It was still in the glove. Came off right at the wrist.
That's after one of those bazookas blew up.
That's you know, the stuff like that. I don't think that's really ought to be interesting to people, you know.
But I think you should talk about Sergeant Sardini because that's.
But I'm not going to.
Well, if you two are going to argue,
Sergeant Sardini was my sergeant out there, and a great guy, and he got wounded right after they got where they were going, paralyzed him for the rest of his life. Got smacked right in the hips.
He was on the top drill team of the nation.
And you know,
explain what a drill team is.
Mom, it's a drill team. I'm not going to explain that. I'd be the poorest explanating guy about that. I never did know how to drill anyway. I was always out of step and going the wrong direction.
well, after knowing you for 52 years, I can believe that. Okay.
What else you want to know, Michael? Sam?
What did you do after the war, such as family, jobs, and etc.?
After the war?
Yes.
Well, now I can get into that. There she is, right over there. and yes, look in there, Nat. Say hi.
Hi.
That's what I did after the war, Sam. And she was Nancy and I was married during the Korean thing, and my leg was messed up and I couldn't go back into the shop. I know it said on there I told what I was doing before we went, you know, but I had got into the wheel alignment and frame straightening and body work. But since I drove truck down there, and that was before I went into the Korean deal. And so, but I couldn't go back into that because my leg wouldn't. You work squatted down doing that kind of work, and I couldn't do that. So we went and got a job working for a guy on a farm. And am I supposed to shut up?
Nope.
Oh,
You're
go
going.
ahead.
Keep going. Tell us about your kids and what you did.
Well, we had about 6 months after I got out. No.
Oh, about 6 weeks.
Yeah, about 6 weeks after I got out, Michael was born. You don't know about Joe? You're his age.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't remember that? All right. But yeah, we had Michael. He's our son. We only got one son. We got 3 daughters. And We don't like any of them too good. Anyway, but we've had a good time. We've had a good life since then. What else you want to know, Sam? You want to know anything
I
else?
think that's it.
That's it.
Yep, that's it.
We were I went over as a replacement, infantry replacement, and they were probably somewhere towards the middle of France by that time, and then I was with them from then on, and after probably a little over a month of almost constant combat, we were relieved and were supposed to go back for a rest. We didn't any more than get back, and the Germans made that breakthrough, and we were sent out at that time our orders were to find the enemy and engage him. We didn't know where we might bump into him or anything. You didn't know when you seen another person in American uniforms with American equipment, whether they was German or American. And I know one night we were guarding a road, and we seen one of our ambulances come. Well, the first guy that he come to, he hollered halt. The next guy hollered halt. I was the third one. I hollered halt, and I had him in my sights. And about that time he stopped. If he wouldn't have stopped the second he did, he'd have been dead. But whether he was American or German, I don't know. Never did find out. We took him up to headquarters. That was all. I never did find out anymore. And because some of the Germans did have our uniforms, and then later on, why there was heavy snow on the ground, and they put white sheets over the top of their uniforms, and at night you couldn't see them moving. So that made it a little more spooky.
Where you don't know, because you're moving, you don't know exactly where you were when you were captured, but do you remember what were you engaged in at that time?
Well, we were sent to take this small town, and we were told there wasn't too much in it, and we got up there and there was. As we moved up, we had just got some new replacements the day before, and artillery shell went off right in front of me. I was laying flat on the ground. There was one of these new replacements was right close to me. He was killed, and it took the pack off of my back and put holes in my clothes, scratched my back up a little. When first time I took my clothes off afterwards, why shrapnel rattled on the floor. And then shortly after that, then is when we moved into this building, and they eventually got that hand grenade in there. And I'm sure that's part of what caused my hearing to be bad now. And we could hold off in there pretty good until they pulled a tank up outside and aimed that 88 at us, and we knew we had to come out then. That was the end.
Yeah.
One shell from that, and it would have blown the whole building to pieces. We'd have been the same way.
Okay. You want to tell about that?
All right, last May, I finally got a thank you from the French government for helping liberate France. And they sent this letter along with this diploma that in thanks for my efforts in helping liberate France.
What general sort of equipment did you have on you when you went into battle? What kind of rifle did you have?
What kind of what?
Equipment.
Equipment?
Oh, equipment? Well, I had my M1 rifle, and I also carried, had a launcher that would go on the end of the rifle, and you put a blank shell in that, and you had an anti-tank, what they called an anti-tank grenade, which wouldn't do much to a tank, but I also carried that. And we used that more if you wanted to get a hand grenade into someplace and you was too far to throw it that far, we could use that instead of a hand grenade and get it a little farther. And that was the main part of the equipment I had. It was nothing but infantry, and you walked everywhere you went, or crawled. You done a lot of crawling in the mud and snow.
Well, thank you for coming in, and we appreciate hearing the story.
Okay, thank you. After I was home, at nights, I would wake up with nightmares. And this lasted for over 30 years. And finally, all at once, they quit. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night, scared to death. But, and just all at once, they quit.
Yeah.
So I turned around and went back to Brigham City, Utah. And the major said, "You've got to go. You've got to go again." I said, "No, I don't." But they did send me back. And I had to get around where a lot of noise was, which I couldn't take.
You could not take
No.
just the normal noise
And,
of traffic? Or
Seeing people out walking around and everything. Oh, Lord, no, I couldn't do it.
this was an after effect of war?
Right. When I got back to Topeka, I can remember the guard standing out there. It was on guard duty, walking back and forth.
And Forrestville.
And I can just remember, no, you can't have that gun, I'm taking it. Yeah.
This bothered you at night also?
Mhm.
Well, how many years?
Oh, boy, I don't know.
Probably about at least good 3.
Oh, it's just the noise and everything I couldn't take.
Finally, you were able to move on to,
Gradually, yes, but a long, long time.
Mrs. Harden, you had to help him through this time, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Because he got back in December and we got married in January. The following January. And so there was we've been through some rough times. If he'd get a job and something would disturb him or hurt, if you can't do a man's job and do it right, you're out of there. He'd either quit or they'd say, well, I can't use you, calm down more or something like that. But and outside of his hearing, oh Lord, I'd hate to see how many hearing aids we got. And finally he went to the VA in Topeka. And they give them to you free, and this is what it's all about. That's what it's there for. But we didn't realize that or check into it till we did then. And even now he gets some medication from the VA.
So what kind of work did you do around that time?
As you recovered,
Little by little,
And so what kind of work have you done?
Well, let's see.
You drove cab for a while.
Yeah,
You went to the Goodyear or whatever it was tire station and fixed flat tires for several years.
mm-hmm,
And then you worked at Armco Steel
right.
for quite a few years. And that was making corrugated pipes, steel pipes. And so that didn't seem like gradually he would.
Can you show us some of the stuff that you brought?
This is the discharge paper.
You want to take all of that?
Yeah, that's,
And copies. He has to carry a copy of his discharge with him all the time, too, even to this day. Let's get to the pictures.
yeah, I'm trying to find it.
And he had, this is what they call a VE envelope.
Right,
We'd write him a letter, and it would he'd get it in this condition. It was all, they'd get it down to where it was like that. This is one that, a friend of his, Ted Mitchell, sent.
you don't remember that.
Do ya? And they'd get to write free up here in the corner, so they didn't have to pay for
No
it.
postage.
Yeah. Which was only about 3 cents at that time, but. And if there was anything in there that said like where he was or something, then they had it blotted out, blackened out.
Censured.
Uh-huh, sure was. A lot of it.
This is some of our tanks and one thing or another here. There's more of them.
But now the tanks that they have that we see
Oh,
on TV
today it's altogether
are so
different from what we had.
sophisticated and streamlined compared to the ones that he had. You know, it's just, watching the news, we just sit there now.
Did you feel like the Germans had a better tank than we did?
Yes, definitely.
You're really afraid to go up against them one-on-one.
Yep. Oh, yes. They had a lot better tanks than we had.
Okay.
Oh, boy. This is when we was getting ready to go overseas. We had to turn all the equipment back in.
Equipment you trained with, you turned it back in, and then
Right.
See, they did get leisure times. They'd lay out on the rocks.
That's when we had to go out and let the artillery, infantry sign in on us and one thing and another, so.
Some of these buddies, probably his sarge. He thought a lot of his sergeant. And this is just the dust from the tanks kicking up as they're going down the road. Here he is with a buddy back in the United States at one of the dime stores. Did the other kids want to?
dime store picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you go sit in there and put in a quarter, they'll take the pictures.
And before we went overseas, This is the ammo cartridge that we shot up for practice.
Oh.
and one thing.
You had to carry ammunition inside your tank,
Oh, yes.
and then how did you get more? You had to resupply.
Well, on the side of the tank where you picked a lot of your ammo up, which was 75s, 105s, 30 caliber. Yeah,
Carried gasoline too.
2 tanks. Yeah.
It was always crucial that you could get refueled and
Oh, yes.
get more information.
Something you kids haven't asked is, what did they have to eat?
I can remember the first day that we moved out to go in action. Oh, brother. Scared to death.
They got what
You were
they
scared.
called carrot cave rations, and everything was in tin cans, and they were the military color, the khaki color, like the cap he's got in the jacket. And so whatever you open, that's what you ate, whenever. No time for cooking.
Did you have a indoor bathroom in the tank?
Yeah, you sure did.
All GIs, they did what they wanted to do, wherever it was, they had to do it.
Any questions?
Why do you have to carry around discharge papers at all times?
Oh, in case that, oh, a lot of times when he was hunting for work and wanting a job, they'd have to show him his discharge papers. And he just automatically, he's got it in his billfold and carries it all the time now anyway. He doesn't have to, but then when he first came out and he was home for a furlough, and of course he always had to wear his uniform and always had to have his leave papers with him.
Josh Aislinn to the office to leave, please. Josh Aislinn, please come to the office to leave.
I'd like to ask another question. Are you ready for a question? Were you happy to fight in the tank as opposed to being an infantry soldier outside
Well,
the
I don't know
tank?
if you'd be happy or not, but
Would you choose again to fight in the tank, or would you choose some other?
do what?
Would you choose to be in the tank corps again,
Mm-hmm.
or would you choose to be a foot soldier?
Well, you didn't have no choice at that time.
I see.
They put you where they wanted you. Yeah.
What was your favorite thing about being in the war?
Getting to come home on leave.
Yeah, that's right.
Where were you when the war ended? You were home by then?
Let's see.
They'd given you a 90-day furlough, and yeah, we were down on Main Street in Topeka when we heard it on the radio here. And so everybody ganged down Kansas Avenue. It was just packed.
You're talking about Topeka,
Right, talking
Yeah.
about Topeka.
when the news of the war ending came.
Yeah.
This
it was
Europe or Japan?
Europe.
Europe.
Yeah.
And what
And
happened?
Japan too.
VJ Day and VE Day.
Right,
And so you were in Topeka VE Day.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, we were down there
It
for
wasn't
Big J Day,
ended
too.
over in the CBI.
That's China, Burma, and India.
Right. So therefore, when we got our war over with, they sent some of us over to CBI.
In Topeka, when the news of the war ended, Is Main Street just,
All hell broke loose.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody, they let everything go, no couple
MPs all over.
smoke
Yeah.
coming out of houses where somebody had something cooking and forgot to turn the fire off, and it was a very, very joyous occasion.
Thank you.
You're sure welcome. And when he got discharged, well, he
Well, you know, armed guard, that'll mean guarding the factory stateside or something. But anyway, the Hobbs lost 11 crew and 1 armed guard. And the Minot Victory, she was only damaged April the 12th. And the Donald McClay was damaged April the 10th, May the 20th by a kamikaze. On May the 18th, the Cornelius Vanderbilt was bombed and 1 crew lost. May the 24th, the William B. Allison was damaged by a torpedo, 6 crew lost. And on May the 23rd, the Brown Victory was damaged by kamikaze. Now, the Canada Victory was also sank that when we were stateside and getting our load that for Okinawa, that every place we tied up, they said, oh boy, you know, another victory. That was when the victories were fairly new. And another victory, you know, the last ship that was tied up here was a victory, the Canada Victory. So that was several ports in the United States. Then we went to Saipan, and they said, you know, you're tied up here the same place the Canada Victory was. Then we went to waiting, we didn't, oh, in Saipan then, the battle for Iwo Jima, one of the big battles, you know, that was where they raised the flag, I think. But anyway, that was February the 19th, 1945. And I was on Saipan at that time. And so we passed around a petition. Everybody signed it, including the captain on down, that feeling ran high at the time. We volunteered to take our ship and use it in any manner that we could. And if failing that, to give us all rifles, and we would do what we could. Well, I signed the thing, but knew darn well they wouldn't take us up on it. But they had other plans for us. They didn't know, we didn't know what. So that was when we went then from Saipan to Eniwetok, and they said, boy, you know, you're anchored here just about the same place the Canada Victory was. And then still waiting and not knowing what we were doing, but we were moved to Ulithi, waiting for the Okinawa invasion. Of course, we didn't know. But they said, oh boy, you know, you're anchored here just about the same place the Canada Victory was. So then when we moved on to Okinawa, and it must have been then when we were transferred around to Purple Beach, and we dropped anchor, and they said, boy, you know, the Canada Victory is anchored here about the same place yesterday, but they sank her yesterday. Anyway, the Canada was sank I didn't put the date down. But anyway, the Canada that's been 56 years ago. Oh yeah, she was sunk April the 27th. And 1 crew lost and 2 of the armed guard. And
all of these victory ships had a name like Canada or
well,
some other?
the Victory, the Liberty ships were all named after people. Like on the Victories, or the Liberties that I've sailed, or worked on, was the Thomas Jefferson, the Walt Whitman, and the Amy Lowell. And somebody said, what do you do, pick them by their name? But, and the Victory ships were named after cities, like the Skagway, Alaska. And I don't think there's ever a Topeka, but there's the merchant ship, the Victories were named after, like, sailed. I've worked on the St. Petersburg Victory, also, that named after St. Petersburg, Florida.
Was any ship that you were on ever really attacked by a submarine or by an airplane? Or
No, the closest that came was at Okinawa, that we had put up a smoke screen, that is, had smoke bombs and with the smoke so that the vision was obscured. Well, this one boy, Japanese Cosmetazi, had come in low and condition yellow from the battleship close by. Condition yellow, fire only if attacked. And we could hear this boy coming in, and the armed guard told the gunnery officer, who was a high school principal from Kentucky, he's a high school principal from Oklahoma, you know, we're being directly attacked, let's fire at him. The gunnery officer said no, said condition yellow, and all the time we could hear this guy coming in. Condition yellow, fire only if directly attacked. Well, what do you think this is? And about that time, he went over and missed us about 15 foot. And at that same instant, condition red, fire at anything that moves, but he was gone. But also, one night, this boy came in high, and the battleship, and you can't believe the firepower that a battleship has. You know, it just looks like a curtain raising from it, the firepower. That this boy had come in high, and he was diving, and the battleship and a cruiser nearby were sending up fire, and how he was living through it, I can't imagine. But the high school principal, the armed guard, and the gunnery officer, who was a hillbilly from Tennessee, were up on the bridge, and the hillbilly took a plug of tobacco out of his pocket and took a chaw and handed it over to the high school principal and said, you see that ship up there? The high school principal took a chaw of tobacco and he spit over the side and said, yeah, I said, looks like he's a diving on somebody. Spit over the side, kind of hope it ain't us. But any other questions, Billy?
Kamikaze is, that's suicide.
That's
pilots.
the suicide pilots.
Their purpose was to fly their airplane into the ship and die.
Yes.
And they caused a lot of damage. You had several close calls with them, didn't you?
Yes. That was, and see, I think Cosmetazi is probably translated as divine wind.
I think you're right, sir.
The Navy Guards. Yes, that, now on the merchant seamen were quite comfortably situated. We had a small cabin with 4 bunks and a desk and lockers, whereas the Navy had one large common room with fold-down bunks, and so that to get any space, they would fold up their bunks during the day, and I suppose they were on watch constantly, of course, as the merchant seamen were, So I suppose the ones on watch just had to sleep through whatever was happening. That one of the armed guard had been a professional drummer, so he had brought a pad, a rubber pad, and he would, practice his drumming on this rubber pad.
So how many years were you serving from the time?
How many years?
44 to when did you get out?
Well, actually, 51, but then that wasn't all the same because I was in college in K-State. Should have worn a K-State t-shirt, but I thought this is more appropriate for the day. Well, took me 3.5 years to get through K-State. So, but I was always known as the guy that's been in 3 wars trying to keep out of one. Because while I didn't serve during wartime in the Atlantic, that I'd gone down to Chile and we picked up a load of nitrates. The same stuff that they used to blow up the federal building in Oklahoma City. And we had a shipload of it. And so the captain said, look, boys, I know a little bit about chemistry. I know this stuff will explode. I don't know how to make it explode, but I know that it will explode. Everything is there. And we said, okay. He said, if it will explode, where's our $10 a month bonus for carrying explosives? I don't care about that. He said, this stuff will explode. Well, at the time, we didn't know how to make it explode. Then 2 years later, there's a ship loaded at Texas City, and it did blow. And I think it leveled everything for 5 blocks around. It was explosive. But now then, we know how to make it explode. And you just mix it with diesel oil or something, and then set it off with a charge, and it will explode. So we use that now for rock quarries and everything. But at the time, we didn't know how to make it explode. We'd take a handful of it, we'd hit it with a hammer, it wouldn't explode. We'd try to burn it, it wouldn't burn. We tried every way we could think of to try to make the thing explode, but we never thought to mix a little oil in it, and that will set it off. But so we unloaded that nitrate then in France, and so I had the opportunity then. I have ridden the train, express train. She'd do 90 miles an hour from Le Havre to Paris, and I could see the war-torn fields and stuff to the side on the. So I saw not war, but I saw the effects of war there. But then I sailed to Amy Lowell, which here we took a load of this is another spearhead jump. She was going already headed for out to sea. Had cast off and was headed out for sea, and she needed another hand, and so I took her and went to unloaded at Venice, Italy, but and I can't remember the name of the town, but we put in one of the towns port towns in Italy, and everything for a mile back from the shore was almost completely demolished. No house had a full roof on it, and people were living there. They had to live somewhere. So they'd patched up those quarters and were living in them. So there again, while I didn't see any actual combat or anything there, I was able to observe the effects of war.
Mr. Maskell, as a merchant seaman, sounds like you would make a trip, round trip with a ship. When you get back into shore, then you voluntarily signed on to another ship, or were you?
Yes, I have a poster that this guy got his sea bag over your shoulder and determined look on his face, and he said, "You bet I'm going back to sea." Now, you mentioned then when we signed off and paid always paid in cash, and then we were on our own. By contrast to the Navy, the Navy would had their clothes furnished. We got room and board, of course, but the Navy had their clothes furnished, and when they were given leave of absence, their pay went right on. In contrast with merchant seamen, once you signed off and got your pay, that was it. You were on your own, no more pay until you signed on another ship.
What did you do after all this ocean going as a?
Well,
when you come back to Kansas then?
A couple of times I came back to Kansas. In '46, I was on the Petersburg Victory then, I think, and there's a general strike and I was at Portland, and I didn't go back to sea, although it seems like I did. That's been years ago, because we had put on 1 million board foot of lumber on her, and I have some memory of getting unloaded, so I must have sailed further.
I'm trying to ask what you have done after your service on the sea.
And what I did?
Yeah.
Well,
You're called it.
Okay, I went back to college, and then I came back after the Korean conflict, and wrote for a short time for the Kansas City Star, and then had the opportunity to work for Drover's Telegram, which was a livestock newspaper. We covered the markets when Kansas City had a stockyard, and it was a good daily newspaper. It was the only daily newspaper that the Amish or the Mennonites were allowed to read, because never in anything in the Drover's Telegram would disturb their sensitivities.
What else did you do? You were a journalist then? Hmm? You were a journalist for the newspaper?
Yes. Then I worked there at Drover's for a few years, and then returned to Westmoreland. My wife's family, her grandfather had bought into the Westmoreland Recorder, the Great Moreland Religious News Weekly, as he always referred to it. Had bought into it in 1885, and so it was still in the newspaper then in the early 50s, when I was working for Drover's Telegram, then returned to Westmoreland and edited the Westmoreland Recorder for 27 years. Of course, edited, that means you do everything, linotype operator, makeup, whatever. Then we had 2 children, Craig and Debbie, that actually, the weekly newspaper editor is more or less the obituary editor. And so Craig then was the son of obituary editor.
Well, we'll end with that joke, Dr. Maskell. Thank you very much for your...
12815 School Creek Road, St.
Brent.
George, Kansas.
The branch of service you served in.
The first branch I served in was Navy, and the second branch I served in was the Army.
The highest rank you received in both the Navy and Army.
Highest rank was a private, and in the Navy it was Seaman second.
Where are we at? Okay.
Dates of military service.
I can't answer that. Let me see. Did you write that down?
Yeah, it's on there. We
It's
figured
on
it.
here?
Yeah. Oh, no,
No, it isn't.
it's on here.
You got it over there.
In the Army from 1944 to 40, or in the Navy, excuse me, from 1944 to 46, in the Army 1950 to 51.
Where did you serve?
Most of the time in North Island Air Base. In the Navy and in the Army, I never got out of Fort Riley, Kansas.
Okay, we're going to skip that next one. Go to.
My name is Joseph Michael Wilson. And my name is Samuel Wilson. We will be the interviewers today. Mr. Westgate, what were you doing before you entered the Navy?
Let's see. Before I went in the Navy, I was driving truck, I'm pretty sure, for Polar Mercantile in Lawrence, Kansas.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
Drafted.
Where did you do your training?
In San Diego, at Camp Decatur in San Diego, California, in the Navy. And I didn't have to do any training, but I took a 2 weeks refresher course in the Army.
What did you do in the war and where did you serve?
In World War II, I served most of my time, like I said before, at North Island Air Base, San Diego, and I was a cook. And I made a mistake and almost got good enough to be an officer's cook. So
You're going to tell us that story, aren't you?
huh?
You're going to tell us that story. He's laughing. There's got to be a story here.
Well, I think they just shorthanded Joe.